Okay, so they just dropped off this Primeweld Cut50 plasma cutter. I wasn't going to do an unboxing, but I cut the top and I noticed it was really well boxed. And in case anybody hadn't seen that, I was going to show a quick video. So here we go. Manual, all those goodies. Some foam around the, it's difficult with one hand, around the actual plasma cutter. Very nicely cut, very nicely packaged. Accessories, I'm assuming, and there's boxes over here on the sides. Oh wow, look at that. Even the corners were reinforced on the bottoms with some metal. Yeah, definitely impressed with the packaging here. Anyways, maybe we'll have another one when I get it up and running. So I just unboxed it and set it on the table. Just first glance here. You know, fittings for the back. Nice breaker on the back. Nice strain relief on the cord. Cord looks pretty heavy duty. Obviously, it's probably got to be considering the amperage going through it. CNC port on the rear. CNC port on the rear. Only makes sense, right? But I've seen some on the front. Around here, the front. You know, typical hookups. You got your torch, ground, airflow, you know, gauge, digital readout, some sort of probably overcurrent or overheat or something, you know. And then I'll have to read the manual and figure out what 4T, 2T, and set air are, but, you know, overall, looks pretty good quality for the price I paid for it. Handle seems pretty robust. A metal handle with plastic retainers, you know. Plastic retainers aren't always the best, but nowadays it's kind of what you get when you buy a kind of a midline, low-end, low-line product. Yeah. Open up the accessory case. I ordered this. It doesn't come with it. I got the cover. It gets pretty dusty in the shop. Just a regular, typical Chinesium torch. It looks like. Maybe a clone. But, without feeling into it, it's hard to tell how the quality of it. You know, we'll get into that later, I suppose. A couple consumables. Hopefully, it came with some drag tips. I don't know if that's standard or not. Guess we'll find out. Let's see what's in this other box. These cheesy face masks that just goes into the garbage. And oh, okay, an adapter. All right, cool. If you want to switch it over to 120, I was wondering how that was going to be handled. You can see it's got the 240 volt on the back, 220, whatever you want to call it, and an adapter here. So pretty nice. Ground clamp looks typical. You know, it's decent. It's not the greatest ground clamp. That might end up getting changed out, but connection looks pretty good. Regular bayonet connector. Clamp's not the greatest, but you probably can't see it, but I can feel it kind of warping in my hand as I squeeze it. All right, that's that. So I had a chance to go through the manual, and we can talk about the front controls here real quick. This is pretty obviously, this is the regulator. This controls the amount of pressure on the torch. This is the current control, even though it says the voltage range down here. This is the current control. It also comes up on the LED display. You have post flow time, so that's after you release the torch, how long it will continue to flow air. And then you have this 4T, 2T, and set air. So set air is pretty obvious. That allows you to set the air pressure. It just basically turns on the airflow. Then you have 2T and 4T. And these are basically just the way the torch trigger works. In 2T, which is the normal mode, you pull the trigger, the torch turns on. And when you let go of the trigger, the torch turns off. In 4T, the torch turns on when you pull the trigger, and then will stay on until you let go of and pull the trigger again. So I guess if you were doing quite a long cut, You didn't want to hold the trigger the whole time, that would be advantageous. Can't see myself using that much, but those are the controls overall. And then there's a overcurrent light. And that's pretty much it. So here we have the torch. As I mentioned previously, I thought this might be a clone, and indeed it is. I totally looked over the label. It's a PT60 clone. I guess they add the I to it. So PT60 is a pretty standard torch, which is great because you have the availability to a lot of aftermarket consumables. You're not stuck with one type of consumable. And the torch tip and head is quite configurable. So it comes with this standard sort of torch head. I have the guide on here. This just keeps the offset on the tip so you don't have to try to hold it at that offset. It's just a standard tip and a standard electrode. We'll go ahead and open it up. Pull the cup off. Here's a standard electrode inside. They make quite a few accessories or variants to this tip end. So if you're doing a lot of drag cutting, I would suggest that you either get the drag tip variant that goes in this standard cup or shroud, or even better, they make a replacement cup that threads on a consumable drag tip that is separate from the actual electrode and pilot tip. So that's probably what I'll be doing in the future. For right now, this did not come with any drag tips. It came with one set of consumables for the standard tip. So one electrode, one tip, and then a little tip wrench. And then I didn't mention it previously, but since we're talking about accessories, it also came with the hookup cable, or not cable, but connector for if you're going to be using it with a table, CNC table. So we're going to start by cutting some 3/8 material that I have. You'll notice this table is kind of odd. So it says 1/3, 2/5. I mean, these are not traditional fractions, but whatever. So we're going to do 1/3. When we go over here, we're going to be using about 43 inches per minute, which is not too bad. It's manageable by hand. And we're going to do 50 amps at 65 psi. So we'll set our machine to that. So we're going to start by cutting about 45, 43 is what it calls for, inches per minute. That's just under an inch a second, right? So we'll be going a little bit slower than an inch a second. So let's just say something along these lines for our cut speed. Okay. So we got our pressure adjusted here. It looks a little high, but once we get to flowing, it'll drop down to about 65 psi. And we have our amperage adjusted to 50 amps. So we are ready to cut. So you can see this cut quality looks pretty good. I didn't hold a perfect line, but the cut quality is good. There's almost no dross. It actually cut way beyond my expectations. So I am thoroughly impressed on 3/8. We'll try some thinner stuff next. So the next material we're going to cut is 10 gauge. So we look at 10 gauge. We're going to be doing about 86 inches per minute, which is pretty quick. And then we're only going to be using 40 amps at 55 psi. So we'll go ahead and set the machine up like that. Okay, so we got the machine set up to 55 psi. If we turn the set arrow on, you'll be able to see it go down to 55. That's our working pressure. Turn it off because it's loud. We've got 40 amps on the dial, so we are good to go and ready to cut. So we got to cut this at 86 inches a minute, which is about an inch and a half a second, which is getting pretty close to how fast you can reliably cut with a controlled cut, you know, like a nice straight line. But we're going to do our best, so that would be, I'm just going to guess, somewhere around this fast. It seems about an inch and a half a second. So we'll go ahead and try that. So this turned out excellent. This is actually the second cut I did. The first cut I kind of botched up the starting, but this second cut I went the same speed and it is almost perfect. If we turn over to the second cut, you can see I messed up the start a little bit, and then I slowed down here just for a second so we got some dross. That dross feels like it'd probably scrape off pretty easily. You can see the dross right here. But this side, it is totally dross free. If you were using this machine on a table, you would be very happy with your results. Okay, so for the price, I think this thing is an excellent addition to the shop. Supposedly it can do 3/4 material. I haven't tested it on 3/4 material because I don't have any. But on the 3/8 and the 10 gauge that I have around the shop, it worked excellent. Now, I know I said it had a dross-free cut that first time, but if we go back and look at the cutting, there's actually some dross on the cutting. So it wasn't dross-free. So strangely enough, these are the two sides here. And you can see one side had some dross and one didn't. I don't know if the torch had a bit of an angle to it or what, but this side looks awesome, and this side's got a little dross. It looks like this would still knock off pretty easily with the chipping hammer. And then again, our 3/8 cut, excellent. This is the cutting again. A little bit of dross, but nothing that won't come off with the chipping hammer. I'm very satisfied with this. It's definitely a quality cut for the price I paid. And I look forward to finally getting it set up on a CNC table when we finally get to that point. But until then, as a freehand machine, it works excellent too. So there you have it.